Welcome. Today is February 5th, 2020. I'm Dr. Terry Hildebrandt, the Director of Evidence-Based Coaching at the Fielding Graduate University, and we're really excited today to have our Evidence-Based Coaching Thought Leaders Series webinar, and today we're joined by Dr. Damian Goldvarg. And Damian is one of my personal friends and a mentor and a guide, and he was my MCC mentor coach, so I credit him largely for my MCC ICF accreditation. I see him laughing, but he's been very instrumental in my life, so I'm thrilled to have him here as part of our webinar today, and being able to talk about coaching supervision and the seven-eyed model from our colleagues out in Europe. So we'll be talking about that today as well. So if you're just joining now, I will ask you to put yourself on mute during the initial part of the webinar. You'll be able to ask questions later as we get farther along in the presentation. So just a little bit more information. I'm going to ask Damian to introduce himself and talk about his work and history, and then we'll be jumping into the seven-eyed model, which is a powerful tool that's used in coaching supervision.
Thank you, Terry, for inviting me to do this session today. I really appreciate all of the work that you are doing around coaching supervision to bring visibility to coaching supervision in fielding and worldwide. And as you know, I have been working on it for a few years now. I started working on coaching supervision when I was in the global board of directors of ICF. And we were having conversations about what should be the role of coaching supervision in the profession and in the future of coaching. And at that time, there was not any program that was training supervisors in the United States. So finally, we had the first one from Coaching Supervision Academy, and I decided to take it just to learn about what was coaching supervision. And I did it more from a strategic perspective in terms of where the profession was going. But I fell in love with supervision. I found that was such a great learning opportunity for me, and working with coaches and learning together in this collaborative space, that I started advocating for coaching supervision. And then I found out that in Europe, European Mentor and Coaching Council make it mandatory for all coaches to go through coaching supervision as a way to reflect on the space. And I was thinking, okay, shouldn't we do that worldwide? Shouldn't the International Coach Federation do something like that? But everything that is mandatory is not well received. Everything where people feel pressure and control, people don't like it. So we were talking about how we can make people first to understand what is coaching supervision. And Terry, you have been one of the pioneers in separating supervision. Say, we need to find something else. We need to find a different word, because the word supervision is not really helpful. People think most of the time about management, controlling, telling people what to do, quality control, rather than reflective space. Mm-hmm. So we have been working, we had conversations about that. When I was in the board of directors of ICF, also we had conversations about that. And it seems that for now, the closest that we can get is to splitting the word in two. So it's about supervision, it's about taking distance, reflecting on our work to be more effective. It's not about managing quality control, telling people what to do, but it's more about collaborating and learning together. I don't know, Terry, if you want to share anything, if you want to participate also, share some of your thoughts about that. What has been your experience?
Absolutely. So for those who aren't aware, I went through Damian's earlier coaching supervision certification program, which is quite a robust program. It's 150 hours of continuing coach education units provided by the ICF. So it's like getting another PCC, essentially. And I found it to be an amazing experience. So I got very excited about promoting supervision. I run a mastermind group that, along with Jeff Nally, who's another graduate of cohort 2 that was with me. We've also done a global study that just got published, which I'll talk about later, and put a link into the chat room if you want to read it. It's the largest global study of coaching supervision in the world with 1,280 participants. And I've been doing these webinars both within fielding and other places. And for those who don't know, coaching supervision is a requirement for all graduates of Fielding's evidence-based coaching program. So it is a standard part of our curriculum. So we have a great deal of commitment to supervision. We're using small group supervision in our program as opposed to one-on-one. And then I'm also a supervisor in private practice. So I have my own clients that hire me, which we'll talk more about that. It's unusual that you would hire and pay your supervisor, but that's what we're actually doing here in coaching supervision. It's providing a reflective space for coaches to learn and grow through continuing professional development. And ICF is recognizing that as a major form of professional development now, and allows you to include that in your 40 hours of renewal every 3 years. So we're really excited about that. And they consider it core competency, not as an ancillary thing, but part of core element of developing as a coach. So I'll stop there, but those are just a little bit about my history and current status with supervision. And I'm thrilled to have Damian here because he's really one of the key not only in the U.S. but global leaders in this movement, and like you mentioned, have advocated for adoption of supervision in a global way, and especially in the Americas.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the way that I came up with the program was because after doing my first program and graduating from the program, my colleagues in Latin America asked me, Damian, we need to have something like that in Spanish. There is nothing in Spanish. Please, please, please put something in Spanish. So that's the way that I developed the coaching supervision program that Terry, you went through. And that I did it in Spanish. That was my first program. And then Coach Source, that is a company that hires coaches, they lost a big contract because they had to work and compete with a company that provided supervision to their coaches. So when they lost a big contract, they said, okay, we need to also provide supervision because if not, we may lose contracts with these big clients. And as a result of that, I put the first English-speaking coaching supervision certification for them, and then Terry, you participated in that one. That was the second one. And now a few years later, we are starting number 10. So time flies. And also we started organizing conferences to bring the graduates and the people in the Americas together to grow coaching supervision. And we have this year in Mexico coming up our third coaching supervision conference. And Terry, you participated in the last two. You have been very involved and engaged and supportive. So I want to appreciate that publicly, because I do believe that we need to collaborate and work together. And you know, I found that this week that I got an award by the European Coaching and Mentor Council for my contribution to coaching supervision. And I had to write something about it. And I wrote, I feel honored, though sometimes I feel discouraged and tired because this is challenging. You know, when you have a leadership role, it's challenging because we found out a lot of resistance and misunderstandings about what is coaching supervision. So there is a lot of education. So I'm very glad that here we have some people interested today learning more about it. And also we are going to have people who cannot come today, but they will be watching the recording, who can benefit from learning more about it. So I have a set of slides, so I can share a little bit of content. Then I want to invite everybody to participate. I'm going to invite everyone here to do an exercise applying the model. So I'm going to teach you a model, we're going to apply it, and then we're going to share some of our learning. So this is the plan for the next 40 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions. So let me share with you my slides, and you can access to these slides. I don't want that, I don't know, let's see, share screen. I don't know why it's doing this.
We see it now. It's good.
You can see it now?
Mm-hmm.
You can see the whole.
Yeah, if you want to go into slide mode, now we see just the one slide.
Okay,
Perfect.
good. Okay, great. Okay, good. So I want to share with you this model. The 7I model of coaching supervision is one, not the only one. There are many models to understand coaching supervision. I really like this one because I think it's easy to understand. And I do believe if we look at the future of coaching and if we think about what are the trends, what are the things that we need to pay attention to, I do believe that coaching supervision is one of the ways that we look at quality, we look at reflection, growth, learning, and a way to move the professional practice toward the future. So my position is that every coach, my vision, let's say, is that every coach works with a supervisor. I work with two supervisors because I do believe that we all have blind spots. We believe we can be doing great work, but we always, there are things that we may not be seeing. So coaching supervision is a reflective space, it's a collaborative reflective space where we can learn, grow, and develop. And with that in mind, what I'm going to do is to share the definition from ICF. The International Coach Federation, share the model and do the exercise and answer your questions. These are the four things. So when we talk about the definition, the International Coach Federation, you can see that defines supervision as an interaction, and the key elements are the reflective dialogue and the collaborative learning. So this is not, as we were saying before, it's not about controlling or about telling people what to do, but it's about collaborative reflection. It's about thinking together about what's going on, looking at the distance, dissociating ourselves from our work, separating, looking, learning, and implementing the learnings in the future. Now, coaching supervision is different than mentor coaching. Coaching supervision have three functions. One is formative, for coaches to keep learning and growing. A normative one that is about the ethical practices and aspects, is talking about ethical dilemmas, getting some guidance about ethical issues. And also supportive, restorative, where we talk about our emotions, how we can recharge batteries, what's happening to us working with our clients. So these will be the three key functions of coaching supervision, just to get a better understanding. And when we separate it from mentor coaching is more focused on skills. So when we are talking about coaching supervision, we're talking about the being of the coach. What is very interesting in the new revised model from the ICF coaching competencies, there is a space for that. Before it was not so clear, but now in the new coaching competencies model, there are two competencies specifically focused on the being of the coach. Even in the language, there is a reflective space as one of the skills and one of the activities of the professional coach. But it's really great in terms of moving coaching supervision forward. But mentor coaching is different. Mentor coaching is about skills. It's about helping clients to build skills. It's about getting feedback from sessions that usually are in person or recordings about how we are or not showing the competencies expected for a coach based on the three levels, ACC, PCC, or EMCC. So the definition of ICF for mentor coaching is coaching for the development of one's coaching rather than reflective practice. So the focus of mentor coaching is in getting feedback about skills. Now this 7I model that was developed and perfected by Peter Hawkins. Peter Hawkins didn't come up with a model, but he adapted it from other places, and he started using it in coaching supervision. So we want to give credit to Peter Hawkins for all of the work that he has done about using this model. And then the European Mentor and Coaching Council, that is the sister association of ICF in Europe, they adopted this 7I model to develop a coaching supervision competency model. So ICF doesn't have that, but the European Mentor and Coaching Council, they do have a model of competencies for coaching supervisors following this 7I model. So they are very aligned, all of the competencies that the supervisor needs to demonstrate with this model of the 7I model. When we talk about 7I, we're talking about 7 variables, 7 things we are looking when we are working in supervision. And in this model, there are 3 systems that we're going to be working. The system between the supervisor and the coach and the client, and the overall system. So basically, when we are working in supervision, there are 3 key main systems in place. I'm going to be sure that everybody mute their phones. I don't know, Terry, if you can help me with that. Okay, so I am muted too now. Okay.
Yeah,
So
you're
you hear me?
you're good. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. So there are three systems: the supervisory system with the supervisor and the coach system is the coach and the client, and the overall or extended system. And we're going to talk about these three systems. So in the first system, the I number one, or the variable number one, is the client. So in coaching supervision, we want to know who is the client that the coach is working with, what is the coaching agreement, who is the client in the context that the client is living and working. And so in coaching supervision, we're going to ask a lot of questions about the client. And I want you to pay attention to this, because in a few minutes, we're going to do an exercise, and I'm going to be asking you to consider somebody that you're working with as a coach, a client that you're working with, so we can apply this model to your practice. So the client is the person that the client or coachee is the person that the coach is working with. I number two is a focus on interventions. What is the coach or supervisee doing with the clients? So interventions include contracting, include how the coach is asking questions, what are the issues explored, if there are exercises, breathing exercises, the wheel of life, anything that the coach is doing during the session. Sometimes 360 interventions. So basically, it's everything that happened in the coaching session. And the third one is about the relationship between the supervisee and the client. What's happening between the coach and the client? How is that relationship? And for many supervisors, they may just work with these three levels. They may just work with discussing the client, what the coach has done with the client, and what is the relationship, and that will be it. But in this model, we want to go deeper. We don't want to stay just in the relationship between the coach and the client and what's happening in the coaching session. We want to go to the next system, that is the system coach supervisor, and see in the here and now what's happening in that relationship. So the next system, so the first system have these three I's. The first system includes the client, the interventions, and the relationship. The next system is the system between supervisor, supervisee. I number four is the supervisee, is who is the coach and what's happening to the coach working with his clients. So here, the questions are related to what's happening to the coach working with his clients. Is maybe this client reminds the coach somebody that the coach is not aware, and by having this reflection, the coach realizes that he's having some reactions because this client reminds them somebody that they love, or somebody that they don't like, or somebody in their lives. So we want to pay attention to how that may be playing. So in supervision, relations are very important. So we spend a lot of time considering and reflecting on relationships. So here we want to see how the supervisee is relating to the client, but what's happening particularly to the supervisee, discussing the client, and the here and now, when the coach is talking, what's happening to the coach when he's reflecting on the client. Then I number five is about the relationship between the supervisor and supervisee. What's happening in the here and now in the relationship? What happens is many times there is what we call a parallel process. Whatever is happening in the relationship between the supervisor and the supervisee is similar to what's happening between the coach and the client. For example, the client in the coaching session is talking non-stop, talking, and the coach is not engaged. And the client keeps talking and is not asking any questions or engaging the coach in any way. And then the coach comes to supervision and shares with the supervisor that is very frustrated because the client doesn't stop talking. And the coach does exactly the same that the client is doing. He's talking about how the client is talking without giving space to the supervisor to participate or to get engaged. So here in coaching supervision, what we call is a parallel process. We discuss how whatever is happening in the here and now may be parallel to what's happening in the relationship between the coach and the client. What makes this very interesting and help the coach have new insights and awareness about what's happening in working with their clients. And then number 6 is the supervisor. What's happening to me as a supervisor working with a coach. And I will bring this, not just to bring it, but to provoke something in the coach. So for example, I may say something like, when you share this situation, that is producing me, and the result of what it's producing me, maybe what it's producing me is fear. I am afraid about what was going on in this situation. What is your reaction? What is this provoking on you? So we want to provoke some reactions in the coach based on what the supervisor is experiencing. And as a result of that, the coach also can develop new insight and awareness. So here the supervisor, when the supervisor is disclosing their experiences, is doing it not just to do it, but with a goal to provoke something in the coach. And finally, number 7 is the context. It's what's happening in society, what's happened politically, economically, socially. So for example, we have clients in the United States, what's happening here in terms of the impeachment going on with the president, that is in the background, and it may or may not be affecting the relationships and the lives of our clients. So we wanted to bring this to conversation. So I know that somebody, Deborah, you're from Shanghai, in China, people are talking about the coronavirus, how is that affecting the relationship and the situation and each session. So we want to pay attention to systemically the different systems that the clients are part of, and how the supervisor and all of the stakeholders are engaged and involved, and we want to bring it to conversation and to discussion. So these are the 7 I's. Usually I take much longer to explain them, but I want you to get a sense about what they are. And I want to do a brief exercise. I want to invite everyone here today to consider a client that you're working with. So we can apply this model, and then I will ask a couple of people to share. So the idea that you consider first a client, current client or the past, to reflect on the work that you have done with them. And I want you to think of a session. And I want you to maybe write some notes about the client. Who is the client? And maybe talk about the client. How old is the client? And in coaching supervision, we are very careful with confidentiality. We never disclose details about the client. We don't need to know for what company they work or their names. We talk in general terms, what kind of industry the client may work, and some general information just to protect confidentiality. So then the question that we will start in supervision is, okay, tell me about the client that you want to discuss today. And many times we can do that in different ways. We may start with a question. What question do you have today about the client you're working with? And then go from there. But we also want to have some information about the client. So I want you to do that too. I want you to consider and reflect on a client. Choose a client and describe a client with a few words. So who is the client? What are his or her concerns? And what is the coaching agreement? So this will be all I number 1. Now let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is about intervention. So I want you to consider, what have you done with a client? What did you ask? What question did you ask? What tools did you use? What did you do? What was effective? What you may consider that was not as effective? I want you to spend a couple of minutes to think about this question. So one that we have think about the client, and we have think about what we have done. Many supervision model finish there. Okay, so let's just talk about the client and what you have done, and we stay there. But this has a more systemic perspective, and we go further and deeper. So here in the next eye, what we want to go is about the relationships. So the career relationship. How about the relationship with the client? And there is a question that I heard once that I found it interesting. Is that if you were in an island with a client, what would happen? You and your client in an island, what do you think may be happening there? Just as a way to explore that relationship, as a metaphor. Or the other one could be if you were a fly on the wall and you would be seeing this relationship, what would you see in terms of the dynamic of the relationship? And if you want to go more technologically, you can say it was a drone. You know, if a drone at the distance is looking down, what the drone is seeing in terms of what's happening in that relationship. Just as a way to get an understanding of that relationship. So these three questions, or these three eyes, are about the relationship between you and your client. Now, the next one is about you working with a supervisor. So here we don't have that space, but you can still may be able to answer I number 4 questions, such as what happened to you working with a client? What were your experiences? What do you feel? Do you experience any concerns, any challenges, any questions? This is not about the dynamic of the relationship, but it's about you as a coach. What's happening to you? What were your concerns, emotions, reactions? Did the client trigger you? What was happening to you working with this client, basically? And also there are questions about being, how you were showing up with this client. Who are you being with this client? Were you taking a place of protecting the client, like a mother, father figure? Were you challenging the client? Where were you? How were you showing up with this client? And also the question is there any blind spot? Is there a possibility that I was missing something here about who I was being as a coach with this client? Was I challenging enough? Because that's one of the challenges, how much you challenge your clients, because you don't want to challenge too much or too little. What is the right balance in terms of challenging? How do you know how to do that? Now, we cannot work on I number 5 and 6 because this is not a coaching supervision session, so we cannot explore parallel processes or what's happening to me as a supervisor, but we can still look at the I number 7, it's a context or system. What do you think in this working with this client? Maybe some bigger issues, like what was happening in the organization, organizationally. Sometimes if the organization is having a good or a bad year, that may be influencing the processes. If you as a supervisor are working as a supervisor inside the coaching organization, what are the expectations of the coaching organization for you as a supervisor or for the coach working with you, and how that may be playing? Or for example, about society, I was working with a coach in Chile, and you know in Chile now there are a lot of issues going on socially, and that was really affecting the society and the coach and the coaching sessions, so that was discussed in supervision. So whatever is going on socially, politically, that may be impacting the work you're doing. So we are going to stop here. I wanted you to do this exercise. I can share with you the bibliography with some of the resources. We also wrote a blog that you will have access in Fielding, and I will answer questions and see about the exercise, what are your reactions. And then you also will have access to with the slides to my email, my website. I also have a channel in YouTube where you can subscribe and receive information about coaching supervision, coaching, and other topics. And I also have a newsletter that you can access with this information. So let me stop here. I don't know, Terry, if you want to come back and help me here to facilitate the discussion. And so maybe 2 parts. One is if you have questions in general about supervision or about this model, and then we may do some sharing of what was your experience doing the exercise. What do you think, Terry? Do you think that would be a good idea to go in that way?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so who would like to engage in questions or comments from what you have heard so far.
And you can also type in your comments in the group chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your video if you would like to offer a comment or question.
I mean, while we do that, Terry, I don't know if you want to share something based on your experiences.
Absolutely. So, well, it looks like Chris is coming online, so we'll let Chris go ahead and ask his question. Can you hear us, Chris? You are unmuted, so you should be able to say hello.
Hey there, can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, splendid. Yeah, my audio from my webcam isn't working, so I'm dialed into the conference. I didn't have any questions. I just had reflections and observations on the exercise. So I don't know if you want to do questions first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I found the exercise very helpful because it sort of, for some reason I zeroed in on one client I had with my last employer who was having like issues, feeling sort of stuck where he was in his career. And the questions that were asked sort of took me on a sequential journey through the relationship, because, you know, my contact with him lasted about 9 months, and he sort of really, you know, came a long way during. He did a lot of work during that process. But the question that sort of stuck with me was about, you know, parallel processes, and it occurred to me that, you know, I was neglecting that piece of reflection about the relationship that I had with myself as a coach, with him as a client, that you know, that there was some parallel processes going on. And yeah, it just sort of helped open a window that wasn't there before, I guess.
Great, thank you for sharing that, because, you know, many times we don't know what we don't know. And if we are not familiar with supervision, we don't know the space, we may not take advantage of that. So this is what we are doing with Terry. We want people to learn since they are going through coaching training. So ideally, the vision will be that all coaching schools explain all coaches the importance of having a supervisor and keep working and learning. Because when you don't have these spaces, you may not do that exercise of looking at what you're doing and considering the possibility that you may be missing something. So I think that what you're bringing is really a good reflection and a good opportunity for everybody here today to consider what do you do to keep growing and learning.
And Chris, we can see you now, so thanks for that.
Splendid, thank you.
Great. So we have a couple of questions that have come up. Deborah, would you like to ask your question?
Hello. Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, very well. Thank you for sharing with the principles and also the suggestions. I think that's really impressive. I have a quick one about, you know, for the supervisor. Is it about any kind of supervisors, regardless of a leadership level? Since, by the way, I'm the HR for Cargill, based in China. Sorry for introducing to you about myself. So in my daily work, we have quite a few things related to coaching to different type of supervisors, including managing director, for example, very senior level leadership roles, and also those, fundamental supervisors, entry levels as well. So I think we have a quite different level of leadership roles in terms of supervisors. So my question is basically about your theory about the coaching. Is it for any kinds of supervisor roles?
Well, what is interesting here is that all of these leaders and supervisors in your organization may work with different coaches at different levels. And then the supervisors can work with these coaches at all different levels. So in this case, it's not that you need a supervisor to be able to supervise other coaches. If not, and here we're talking about supervision of coaches, not supervision of leaders. And with Terry, we had a conversation at one point too, how to use supervision not only for coaches, but also for leaders who want to have this opportunity to reflect on their work.
Mm-hmm.
differently than coaching. They will be more focused on following these models. But here, the idea is that in this, what we're presenting today, is more focused on how to supervise coaches, the coaches who are working with the leaders. Make sense, Deborah?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, what is an interesting question is that supervisors can work with coaches who work with different kind of clients. The client can be a high-level CEO, or can be a leader, a manager, or an independent contributor. So there are no different levels of coach supervisors. The idea that the coach supervisor can work with different coaches, doesn't matter if they are life coaches or organizational coaches or business coaches. And we are all, of course, talking in the parameters following professional practices, the International Coach Federation practices, the European Mentoring Coaching Council practices, because we know, Terry, that there are many people who call themselves coaches that don't have any background training, and they do more consulting than real coaching. So that's different.
Yeah, I think there's an important distinction here as well, that the word supervisor is a little bit closer in this there's two types of supervision in the world today. One type is the traditional hierarchy, where your supervisor is your boss and essentially knows more, or is kind of senior in their knowledge and skills, and they're managing junior people. In this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that. In this model, it's really what we would call a process model, where the quote-unquote supervisor, in this case coaching supervisor, is really creating a reflective space. And there is no hierarchy, essentially. It's a relationship of peers, even though the coach is paying the supervisor to provide this service. It is an intentional peer relationship. And ultimately, the supervisor is not telling the coach what to do or giving any direction. Instead, they are offering insight. So it feels a lot like coaching, but the purpose is different. But a supervisor will use a lot of the same tools that a coach would use with their clients. But in this case, the purpose is really about continuing professional development of the coach that is being supervised. It's a little closer to what happens in psychology. The psychology community has been using quote-unquote supervisors or offering supervised sessions or for a long time. And now the world of coaching is essentially borrowing from that model that psychology has used for many years.
Okay, thank you both. I think my understanding that the framework will be basically the same, but sort of approaches could be applied differently according to different leadership levels, right? So can I follow up one more question? I noted that we have other questions as well. Do you mind?
Sure, we have the time.
Okay, I have another one. I'm just thinking of the culture background. I mean, the framework could be same universally, but would you consider some cultural aspects inside? For example, I noted that I could be the only one from Asia, might be, but once we're talking about the coaching approaches, coaching framework, do we consider the culture aspects inside as well?
Yeah, definitely. This is very important because we have a systemic perspective. And in the systemic perspective, culture plays a role. So we want to ask questions. We want to be curious. We cannot assume anything. It's like we need to ask our clients, in this terms, coaches, what do you think, or how do you think that the cultures of what's happening socially, politically, is affecting the work that you're doing? Organizationally, if you're working in a university, what's happening at that university? If you're working in any organization, what's happening? For example, I'm working with one of my clients, and now they have a new president. It's a university. There is a lot going on. There is a lot of fear, and that is in the air. It's part of the context. You cannot not explore it. But if you don't ask questions, you may not know that. So you need to include that in supervision, asking the coach, what do you think? Maybe some cultural issues that may be affecting the work that you're doing with your client. And sometimes that brings as an effect where then the coach will go and work with their clients and explore that with their clients. So maybe the coach is not seeing that there is a cultural effect in what's happening to the client. So as a result of the discussion on supervision, the coach can go back to the client and ask questions. What are the client or how the client is experiencing what's happening in the culture, in society, affecting their effectiveness, basically. So yes, so the answer to your question is definitely yes. So thank you for asking that question. There is another question here from Gio about group supervision. And personally, I enjoy group supervision very much because the way it works is instead of one person bringing a case, you work with a group of 5, 6. You don't want to make a big group. I would say the maximum will be 8. That I have worked not more than 8 coaches at the same time, and not less than 3. Like the minimum will be 3, the maximum will be 8, any number between. And maybe in a session, not everybody will have a chance to bring a case, but everybody learns from everybody's cases. So one person will bring a case, and then we will discuss it. And then the role of the supervisor is to facilitate the conversation. So the supervisor brings his or her experience and go through the same eyes that we covered today, but then everybody else in the group also bring their own insights and comments and reactions and experiences. So everybody learn from everybody. So group supervision is a very powerful tool for coaches, and particularly sometimes it's even less expensive, because when you're in a group, you may pay less than if you're working individually. So that can be also a benefit. But I do love group supervision because I see how people learn from each other. And sometimes it's very lonely, the work that we do as coaches. So working with another colleagues and supporting each other also make a big difference in the practice. I don't know, Terry, you want to share some about your experience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's I read that in Peter Hawkins' book that was a process that sometimes worked very well, was to have one supervisor with a number of coaches going through. You know, my particular interest, I think, is in helping leaders to be coaches. So, and then within an organization, and wondering if this supervisory model might be a really good way to help embed a coaching practice within, you know, besides just taking the individuals through a coaching training program, would be then as a follow-up or as an ongoing thing to have a supervisor who supervises these leader coaches trying to coach. Yeah, and then that sounds like that might be an ideal way to really embed the coaching culture within an organization.
I agree. And you know, we were talking about trends in the future, like the part of the ICF research. Coaching supervision is one of the trends, and training leaders as coaches is another one. So there is a big trend on creating the coaching cultures. And based on ICF global studies on internal and external coaching, and comparing organizations that invest in coaching to create a coaching culture, there are 3 elements. The key 3 elements is hiring coaches, working with coaches, developing internal coaches to work inside the company for big companies, and the third one is training leaders as coaches. So they can, you know, we coach like in their leadership style, what Terry was talking before, instead of hierarchical and telling people what to do, to have a coaching approach to the way that they work with their staff.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Yeah.
So I totally agree with what both of you have said, and a large degree of the work that I've done in the last 10 years has been using a lot of these techniques with executives who want to take a more coaching approach with developing their people. So it becomes, some of these tools like the 7-eyed model are also powerful in executive and leadership coaching. So you can translate a lot of those skills into that modality, especially if those leaders are wanting to be more coach-like in their leadership style. So essentially that's what you become doing, is you're really supervising these executives, but we still call it executive coaching.
Oh, I see. So you actually use the model that as a and that framework to coach them. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
then help them to become coaching. Okay, yeah, got it.
Because they are working with their teams, right? They are
Sure.
they're essentially coaching their individual team members. So this model is very helpful there. So it can be useful in that sense as well.
Yeah, good, thanks.
And if anybody is interested, we are starting a new training, a new coaching supervision training. So if we're starting in March, so if you want more information, please send me an email and I can send you the information. It's as Terry was saying, it's an intense program because it's 150 hours and lasts 9 months. And we have webinars where we cover content like today, and then we have practices and triads with the participants. Then people need to practice supervision with other coaches, and they also work with a supervisor that supervises you to go through the process, so you know how is the experience of being a supervisee. So there are all of these elements of being supervisee, practicing with a triad, working with coaches as a supervisor, webinars, demonstrations. So the program is very dynamic with a lot of different elements. So if anybody is interested, please send me an email and I will send you the brochure with information about it.
And by the way, Damian has written a blog for us. So if you go to our Fielding website, it's just fielding.edu/blog. And this is the blog. And there's also a link here under the resources that you can click on, and it'll go to Damian's page to learn more about his upcoming training. And we do need more supervisors in the Americas. So one of the limitations we have at the moment to rolling out supervision in the Americas is a lack of qualified supervisors. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation that we have right now, is that this is something that really is needed in the coaching community, but if everyone jumped on and did it right away, we wouldn't be able to probably meet the need with qualified people. So we're in that mode of getting enough qualified supervisors to really make this a huge movement like it is in Europe already.
Now we also have a network of supervisors that everybody's invited. So we discuss supervision topics with different guests. Every month we have a different guest, so that's it for free. And it's part of the America's Coaching Supervisor Network. So if you're interested in being part of that network and attend some of these meetings, for example, in February, the last Monday of February 24th, we have Peter Hawkins coming. So that would be great if you are available. And Terry, that Peter Hawkins coming to do a session, and it's for free. It's at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I also have a newsletter. If you want to get my newsletter, here we are. This is the conference coming up, and he's invited to a conference we're organizing in Mexico, May 7 and 8. And we here in our Ways at America's Coaching Supervisor Network, here we Lily, with my colleague, we lead these meetings. And here we have resources. We have great videos from past experiences. And here we have invitations about the conference coming up. So there are a lot of resources and great videos for free. All of this available to people too. So these are other resources that can be of value to people.
Okay, so we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions or comments from our live audience. Anyone else like to share or ask a question?
This is from Joe again. When you are doing this, like Terry, you were talking about, you do it with an executive coach, and so you're coaching an executive, and you actually upfront share with them the model. Is that correct? And then so that they know what's going on, or is that more by stealth? You kind of introduce it by stealth.
Well, either way is effective, right? However, when I run small group supervision at Fielding, I do share the model. I send them a short video to watch and an article that I've written for Choice Magazine. So they have some familiarity with the process and why it's useful. Now, if you're in the middle of a coaching session with an executive and you're finding that some of these questions might be helpful, I don't think it's necessary that you share all the theory behind what we're doing as coaches, but it might be useful in the future, because especially if they're managing or are coaching, let's say, leaders who are also then coaching their leaders, this model could be very helpful to them. So it's like, where you become the supervisor of the supervisor, which is also a thing in this movement, right? The supervisors have supervisors to be able to, continually develop their skills and practice. So there is value, I think, in learning the model itself, because it's an inherently a powerful model that can help us all reflect on what we are doing, as either coaches or leaders in this specific case.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good.
We probably have time for one more question. Anyone else on the call that would like to share any of their reactions or thoughts or questions? And I know some of you on the call have been through supervision yourself, and if any of you would like to share your experience, feel free to do that. Okay. Well, I really appreciate everyone dialing in today, and especially Dr. Goldvarg coming in and sharing his expertise and passion for supervision. It's definitely one of my top passions right now, and is transformational work. So I encourage you to continue to explore supervision, and if you've never experienced it, definitely get it. Take advantage of that opportunity. So if you would like to experience supervision, I will be happy to give you a free supervision session. So you can always reach out to me. Many of you are already have experienced it. It is also an opportunity to get deeper understanding and solve client issues and breakthroughs that you never thought were possible. I've even potentially been ready to fire clients before, and have brought those situations to my own supervisor, and had incredible breakthroughs, and turned that relationship around. So, eventually we all run into challenges with certain clients. So supervision is a great way to get some breakthroughs for yourself. So if you've not tried it, I would encourage you to do that for sure. So thank you again, Damian, for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And I wrote my email in the chat room. If people want to be in communication with me, if you want to know more resources about supervision, or interested in coming to America's Supervisor Network meetings that are free every month, you want to subscribe to the channel, or to, if you're interested in becoming a coach supervisor, please contact me and I will be happy to share any questions you may have.
Great, thank you so much for that. I also just have, great, excellent. So I also have just a couple of quick announcements that I'd like to share with everyone. And if you have not yet joined the Coaching Community of Practice, which is sponsored by Fielding and free of charge, and today's webinar is one of the programs of the Coaching Community of Practice, we encourage you to join. It's no cost, but we do need to hear from you and have your permission to add you to our Basecamp site, where we post up and coming webinars, and you can also find job opportunities and potential coaching gigs, and learn more and ask questions of our 380 members. So it's a very robust community. It's one of the larger communities of practice that is dedicated to really furthering the research, practice, and expertise of coaching in the world. So if you are interested, just go to our main website, which is coach.fielding.edu, and you'll see Community of Practice. You can click out that link, and at the bottom, just hit the subscribe button. You can also go directly to this page at ccop.fielding.edu. Again, ccop.fielding.edu. I also just want to let you know about our blog. Our blog has a lot of great information, and this is where we post our up-and-coming webinars as well. So we have our next webinar, which will be on February 26th. our next webinar is actually February 12th, which is next week. The next one will be on making the best of it, a new model for understanding, building resilience. So we have Dr. Susan Auger. She is a Fielding alum and has done research in resilience. She will be talking about her research and practice in this space. Highly recommend diving into that. And if you can't make any of our webinars, we do put them on our website so you can watch them later. In February 26th, we are also doing a what's called evidence-based professional series webinar on coaching women leaders. So we'll have a panel of executive and leadership coaches who are dedicated to supporting women leaders in their growth. So I would highly encourage you to dial in, and if you have any interest in working with women and helping them become greater and better leaders. We also have a really exciting webinar also on March 11th on the tenor method. Dr. Knickerbocker and Charles Jones will be talking about their breakthrough methodologies on really developing emotional intelligence. This is some information that I can guarantee you've never heard anywhere else. Dr. Knickerbocker is also an alum of Fielding and one of my personal colleagues. And I've been personally using tenor for the last 3 years and have found it to be a breakthrough method and theory that you definitely don't want to miss. And they are just in the process of publishing their book on this subject, which will be coming out soon. So you're going to hear about it first here at Fielding. So this is something that highly recommend you tune into. So we will have other exciting webinars later in the year on some research that's been done on pricing the executive coaching community, and Brian Underhill of CoachSource will be presenting their powerful research on April 1st. So I highly recommend you dial in and listen to Brian. He's one of the top global leaders in executive coaching and has the largest network of over 1,000 executive coaches that are providing services to clients all around the world. So highly recommend all of that as well. And lastly, if you miss any of our webinars, you can click on our main website at coach.fielding.edu and watch any of the previously recorded sessions. And we will be having Damian's session up on this website soon. So thanks to all of you for dialing in this evening or morning, if it might be the case for our Asian colleagues. And please let others know about these webinars. They're always free of charge. And we invite you to participate in the future.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Damian, and we'll talk again soon.